So our next hour, we have Jordan Chariton, who is an investigative journalist known for his reporting on the Flint water crisis, the protests at Standing Rock, and police brutality. He's the founder and co-host of Status Coup, of which I'm a member. I encourage everybody to join Status Coup. It is one of those things where you have an opportunity to actually fund your actual reporter and get actual information. And it is very important information that gets overlooked by our state media. Kate Willett is a comedian and host of the Reply Guys podcast. She has appeared on Netflix, Comedy Central, and The Late Show. She's the author of Dirtbag Anthropology, available on Audible. And Justin Jackson is the running back for the LA Chargers and hosts a new podcast, The Takeover, available on YouTube. And I also want to say about Justin that I am very inspired by him because this is somebody who is from outside of what this would be our normal sphere of what we're doing and the people that we work with. And he is someone that has taken such an interest and recognizes the importance of his platform and his voice and has really been using that, especially like in the past year or so, and just being very, very, great at getting the word out to a whole new audience. So let's bring everybody on.
And I have.
And Katie, were you going to take a break?
Yeah,
Do you want to take a break? Okay.
This was from before I knew about this, so I have an appointment that I couldn't
That's
move,
fine. So
I'll say hi.
yeah,
and then
we're gonna let me do a
out.
quick switch. Let me do a quick switch because we can bring on a special guest. Peter, you out there? You want to come in? And yeah, that's okay. You're all good.
Okay.
You'll be back next hour. Don't leave me next hour. Next hour is
I want
the
to say hi
scary
to them,
hour.
but I lost my StreamYard window. Let's see.
Hi guys.
I'll stay for like 5 minutes. If
That's
I'm
fine.
To.
That's fine. Yes, you can stay for as long as you want. I'm so glad you guys are here.
I have to miss Katie Halper. Come on.
I know. We never see each other online,
What's up with that,
right?
Katie? What's up with that?
Yeah.
So, this, we weren't really covering, we sort of had this sort of outline of what we were going to cover each hour. And last hour, we just sort of just let it go where it went, which is fine. But this hour, we were really going to talk about the difference between what we're getting from independent media versus mainstream media and the problem with corporate media, how they address things and how people like us are getting suppressed, censored, and ghosted. And just the importance that the people that need to be covering the issues like Julian Assange obviously are not. And that it has been left to the people like us to be doing these things when in fact mainstream media should be covering it. So Katie, did you have questions that you had for this, or did you want me to just go?
Well, I mean, I was going to ask about how they've, in their different roles in media, how they've seen the media cover it and how they are trying to use their voices, from as an athlete, an activist, and then as a comedian and podcast host, and then as a journalist. That was an order from Justin to Kate to Jordan, in case anyone thought that Kate was doing football. But yeah, there definitely different ways that they were raising awareness about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my end, it's, I feel like I have kind of a unique, like Jen was saying earlier, potentially unique audience and potentially a unique ability to reach people who, aren't usually super involved in politics or just don't know a lot about it. And I think a lot of times when people don't know a lot about politics, they'll immediately either go to the mainstream news or they just will say, oh, I don't know much about it. I'll leave that to the politicians, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really want to make my show and bring up, obviously, big issues like, what we see with, what happened with the American Rescue Plan and what's going on with Assange, just, Syria, all these things that, a lot of people, especially when it comes to foreign policy and stuff like Julian Assange, people don't, they stay away from it because they feel like they're not knowledgeable about it or they just don't even know what's going on. So that's kind of what I want to bring, more people into, just be more knowledgeable about this stuff because it really does affect all of our daily life, right? And, what we do overseas, you see done here, right? You see carried out on the streets in the United States. What happens to Julian is happening to Julian Assange is 100% going to happen to another journalist who's exposing war crimes if we don't stand up for Julian Assange and stand up against the government, obviously trying to extradite him and continuously torturing him. So I think it's important to be a leader on these type of things, and it's important to speak out when there is a media blackout because, independent media really is all Julian has speaking out for him and defending him. So I think that's vitally important for us to do that.
Yeah. And Jordan, I know you know the suffering of independent media and what is going on and how everybody is being suppressed and not getting their voice out. But obviously it doesn't compare to what's happening to Julian Assange. But I know that you definitely have thoughts on the blackout of this and how it's not being covered by mainstream media.
Yeah, I think that, and thanks for having me. I think that a lot of people, when it comes to Julian Assange, are really rightly focused on the Department of Justice and the FBI, and in this case, Biden continuing the policies of Trump. But in reality, the reason that this has been able to go forward is because of the corporate media. I from my own experience, I recall I was arrested a couple years ago just covering a Black Lives Matter rally in St. Louis, and I spent I don't know, not too long, maybe like 16 hours in jail overnight. But when I got out, I literally had to beg CNN's Brian Stelter just to do 30 seconds on reliable sources, because I don't know, I figured he might take issue with a journalist being arrested doing their job. Of course, he wouldn't do it. And he basically told me, well, you know, we only really cover mainstream journalists. So I bring that up because if any of these mainstream outlets were saying anything about this injustice regarding Julian Assange, Biden would have never went forward with the appeal. If the same corporate journalists would have express the same outrage about Julian Assange that they do, for example, and Des Moines Register journalist was arrested covering a protest and like charged. It was this very like 1984 dystopian thing. You know, good thing, you know, luckily a judge dismissed that, but the corporate outlets, they bandied together for this journalist with the Des Moines Register, rightly so. But when it's Julian Assange, when he's now persona non grata because whatever, the Russian boogeyman, they don't touch it. So I really think, as terrible as, you know, the Department of Justice and obviously the entire deep state, which does exist, is, honestly, I think the corporate media is, if not equally to more responsible, because their silence on this is allowing Assange to basically continue being a political prisoner. I 100% know, just from my own experience, if any of these outlets would start writing op-eds or be voicing displeasure about this, Julian Assange would be free by now. And it's really disgusting that they're not doing that.
Yeah. So Kate, tell me, I mean, obviously you have a comedian background as well as doing your show, which I was on, which was really fun. But like, you obviously recognize the importance of this. So if you would just speak a little bit like how you got in, like how this impacts you, or how you see that this is something that's important to you as well.
Well, so like a lot of comedians, I am concerned with free speech. Like, I mean, it's always something that I thought was important, but I feel like, you know, in comedy, one thing that gets talked about a lot is cancel culture. And people are extremely concerned with free speech as like, this kind of like pretend thing. Like if you say something, you know, kind of shitty, then like people will reply to you on Twitter and you're being silenced. That's not being silenced. Being not able to do investigative journalism, like, you know, that is a real free speech violation. And one thing that I really want to get across to comics and to other people who have kind of come to being concerned with like speech issues is, no, this is actually like 10,000 times more important than whether someone is rude to you and your replies, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody should be on notice, because if somebody can be prosecuted for telling the truth, yeah, what could happen to comedians? I mean, that, you know, that's a definite problem. This is Peter, by the way. He's joining us in the absent. This is my partner and also the co-host of the podcast that we do, but he's kind of stepping in since Katie left us, and he's friendly with Jordan. So it just seemed like the appropriate hour to sort of switch it up a little bit.
You know, it's funny. I'll go right into it, Kate. I think this is a great opportunity to really talk about the evolution of comedy over the past few years, because it seems like a lot of comedians who, you know, I would normally think would be kind of like, they want to be outsiders. They don't want to be part of the establishment. I've seen a lot of comedians get very friendly and have a lot of corporate talking points with their shtick. And I would find that to be very, very concerning. But of course, you're awesome. And the fact that your hashtag is a direct shot at this guy who just got exposed for being a total hack for the establishment, I think is beautiful. So if you could talk about that, that'd be super.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a lot of comedians, I think, like at least on the outside, they're saying like we should be able to say anything, but really a lot of times what people are talking about is just that they like really want to make jokes at the expense of marginalized groups, and they're like, oh, we can't do this, and it's like, no, like you shouldn't, but you can. I mean, like there are people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year by just kind of affirming the things that like the kind of like really entrenched, terrible, oppressive power structures in our society. And I think that the real free speech issue, like in comedy, is that the second that you start talking about like anything that's going to piss off corporations, like whether it's the destruction of capitalism or even abolition, then that's when I think you start to see people like kind of, stop speaking their mind as much. And, definitely like there's a lot of, not every single media outlet is conservative, of course. Some are liberal, but it's all just like it's pro capitalism. It's all pro corporation. And I wish that the free speech principles that people are saying that they care about so much, they would actually look and see like, okay, like what is it that you truly cannot say on a corporate platform?
That's beautifully said. And, Justin, everybody had an opinion about, Kaepernick taking the knee. But I also think that there was a lot of people that, while they may have supported him, weren't willing to put themselves out there because of the ramifications that they may fear, what might ultimately end up happening. And I think a great focus of this particular hour is really about the difference between independent media and corporate media, and how I just think people are deathly afraid of stepping out of line with corporate media and the absolute hammer that they could bring down on them. So I'm curious if a lot of NFL players, do share similar sentiments about, aside from obviously their economic interests, when it comes to these primary interests that we talk about, do they share similar, sentiments that you have, but they're not necessarily willing to put themselves out there, so to speak?
I mean, I think that definitely is there. And just like Kate was talking about, I mean, when you think about it, it all comes down to money, right? And it all comes down to access and the ability to stay in whatever industry you're in. And obviously in the past, it has been kind of persona non grata to, speak about some of these issues. And you obviously, like you mentioned with Kaepernick, but it takes people being leaders like Kaepernick, like Eric Reed, like Kenny Stills, some of the people that even in the time were stepping out and speaking up, in the face of, very conservative customer base, if you want to say consumer based, which is what the NFL has, and speaking out regardless. And obviously, what happened as a result of that with Kaepernick was him not being able to continue to do, the job that he wanted to do and that he trained his whole life doing, and all of a sudden losing that just because he was speaking out. So I think for me, I just take that as an example. Like you saw 3-4 years later, even though at the time he wasn't, celebrated for it. I mean, he was in certain circles, but in general, he wasn't celebrated.
No, he was persecuted.
Yeah, he was persecuted. Exactly. So, I mean, I take that as an example of like, if you have your, you have your convictions and you're in the right, you're fighting for the right things and marginalized people and, the least amongst us, then at the end of the day, you're going to be vindicated. And at the end of the day, you can live with yourself knowing that I went out there And despite the potential ramifications, I still went out there and I spoke my mind and I spoke up and used my platform, for people that don't have one. And I think that we have to kind of get over that. We have to get over that hurdle of seeing like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue in the line of work I'm in because I might receive some type of, persecution monetarily or whatever. Obviously, you see people out there, you see workers out there striking all the time, and they're risking their well-being. But at a certain point, you have to say enough is enough. And I'm hoping and I'm trying to get more people within the NFL, because I do think a lot of people, I mean, especially because a lot of players come from these disadvantaged communities that have seen the results of neoliberal policy, that have seen the results of widespread conservatism in the American mainstream. So I think it's important for myself and people like Kaepernick and whoever has that platform to continue speaking on that. That's what I'm going to keep doing, and I'm going to keep doing my best to convert some of my teammates. And there are a good amount that I think are very open to a lot of these ideas. I hear a lot of my teammates talk to me a lot of times in the locker room. We have conversations, and I think it just needs to be put more in the mainstream thought of sports to be more involved in politics, because it was not always like this. We know the Muhammad Ali's and the Jesse Owens, like they were very involved politically as well. So I think we need to get back to that, and that's what I'm trying to do.
No, and you did a phenomenal job. You made Alex AOC, kind of expose herself a little bit. And, there's a lot of people who, were anticipating that a lot of members of the squad obviously were going to get into politics and we're going to be a little bit more forceful about the primary issues. But I think one of the biggest issues that's still lingering over the past, I guess you would say, Jordan, how long is it now with Flint? Is it 6 years now that we're going on, where we literally have a city, an actual city in this country with a poisoned water supply? And
there's more. There's lots more.
That's
the one that we know about. There's lots more.
And yet it seems to me, obviously you've spoke at length about the issues you had at the Young Turks and their refusal to really dive on this issue the way they should have. But I'm guessing that they're not the only ones that have basically given you the cold shoulder about what I think is a monumental issue when it comes to, the freedom of the press and really focusing on the issues that need to be addressed. And I think if you could speak to that, I don't think people really understand just how, sort of persona non grata you became by going for this story, and you haven't let up on it one iota.
And a month is 7 years. So 7 years.
Wow.
I think, Jen is right. It's all over the country. I think with Flint is unique because I think a lot of people, and because the media has just so disgustingly just dropped this story, I think a lot of people don't realize it's not only about water. I mean, for the citizens of Flint, clearly it's about, clean water. But Flint is basically everything wrong with this country wrapped in one. I mean, this was a privatization scheme that obviously went terribly wrong. This was, Republicans trying to run government like a business. This is the Democratic Party doing next to nothing for the people there. It's not just a Republican thing. President Obama is greatly at fault for a lot of the things that happened there and continue to happen there. And then you have the media, which to me, I mean, I'm talking like 2 days ago. I don't want to say too much, but, in January, we broke a significant story about Governor Snyder himself lying to Congress and him essentially helping cover up the deadly Legionnaire's disease that broke out in Flint. And we have a follow-up. I'll tell you, I mean, in a sane system, the hard part for a journalist would be actually getting the goods, like getting the information, not getting it published. For me and my partner, Jen, for the last 5 years, it's not easy. Obviously, we've gone back so many times. You have to build sources and build trust and just do the work. I mean, I've been there almost 20 times. But
you mean actual journalism?
Correct. But the easiest part, I don't want to say easy, but the less difficult part has actually been getting the information. The way more difficult part, I mean, I will be writing a book or doing a documentary, has been breaking through with the corporate media. And I actually think it gets back to what the original purpose of WikiLeaks. Why do you even need a WikiLeaks? Because the corporate media doesn't do its job. Because whistleblowers did send stuff to corporate outlets over and over and over again, whether it be about Iraq, whether it be about domestic corruption, and corporate outlets. We say corporate media outlets because they've literally been hijacked by corporations, passed. And I can't tell you, I mean, I literally today, as we're speaking, my partner and I have evidence that evidence was destroyed in the criminal investigation, that evidence was hidden in the Flint criminal investigation, that Governor Snyder himself was involved in some of this. And I literally had NBC News the other day pass saying, yeah, it's kind of like you have a lot of information here, but this is kind of like stuff people just kind of knew already, right? And I said, well, by that standard, why bother reporting on Amazon? Everybody knows Amazon is heinous. Why bother reporting on the police and their brutality and corruption? Everybody kind of knows, right? I mean, why bother reporting on anything if the standard is, well, we kind of like assumed this. So I just pushed back to the editor, who I actually like. It wasn't her passing. It was her telling me her boss passed. And I said, listen, let's just call it what it is. This is about Flint, Michigan. NBC doesn't give a shit anymore. I think a huge problem we have, a lot of people talk about that we need more diversity in government or the media, in skin color and gender and all these things, which I agree with. We also need a lot more diversity in terms of socioeconomic representation, because we have way too many out of touch, upper middle class white people who, graduated Northwestern Journalism School and have never.
Hey, I went there.
I went there too.
I'm sorry.
You're right, though. You're right, though.
I mean, I'm not going to name names, but the editor that I've been dealing with for the last month is one of the most out of touch people I've ever dealt with. Most of the gatekeepers for corporate media have never actually stepped foot in any of these communities. They've never broken a significant story. They've never built any sources, and their whole existence is just to get a story down to 1,500 words. So, yeah, I think
you have to be able to read it on the toilet.
Right.
Yeah.
I think honestly, I mean, you want to look at the comedian end. I saw Jimmy Fallon the other day, or I don't know if it was I don't know if it was the other day, but John Oliver kind of snuck in like a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was the truth about Amazon, like basically union busting and terrible conditions. And Jimmy Fallon moved off of that lickety split. So I just, when you look at Julian Assange and why WikiLeaks was needed in the first place, it's really because we have a journalism crisis in this country. And that crisis is, if you think of it like a bank robbery, corporations have stolen the information airwaves, whether it be digital, print, whatever. Even the New York Times, which is somehow considered respectable, is a joke. I mean, 1 out of 10 stories are decent. The rest is just essentially government officials feeding them bullshit and then reprinting it as, news. So I think we're in a real crisis. And this is why, if Flint is used as kind of a microcosm as the rest of the country, this is why citizens are left to drink toxic water for 7 years, why they don't have Medicare for all in Flint, while white states that had similar issues do have universal health care. This is why nobody has been brought to justice. Nobody is in jail. Nobody's even faced a jury trial in Flint, because the media simply doesn't care. And the media honestly would, if I would have been able to prove over the last 5 years to any of these outlets, Daily Beast, Mother Jones, the New York Times, Washington Post, all of these outlets that passed, every time I had something substantial, if I could have shown a connection to Trump, which one of them actually asked me, is there a connection to Trump? Russia?
Of course.
Or something, it would have been a lot easier. And it's really sad and scary, because it's hurting. Yeah, it hurts independent outlets that can't get it out. But most of all, it hurts communities that are not having the truth exposed.
Absolutely.
John with the perfect comment. And the one thing I do want to add, and Kate, the floor
Who
is
has the
yours.
cat?
Yeah, who's got the
It's
cat?
me. I'm so sorry. That's why I'm muted. You know what? I'm just going to let him in, and then he'll stop doing that. And then you'll
I have my dog. It's okay. We're pet friendly.
Absolutely, we are. And so, you know, I got to tell you, I really think that with John Oliver, he's like the one person who is, and he's well paid in the establishment. You know, he's on HBO. He's got, you know, a huge platform. But I'm telling you, because he's not from this country, he has sort of he's going through an identity crisis right now, because he comes from a country with universal health care and universal education and, you know, much more, you know, civil liberties that are appreciated. And he's here and he's making an amazing living. But there's a part of him that's like, this stuff is not right. And I kind of want to get that out there. And it's not Jimmy Fallon who cut him off. It's, as you know, Jordan, it's that producer in his ear says, cut him off, cut him off, cut him off right now. Get him off.
So in other words, we're saying Jimmy Fallon's just following orders.
Oh, you better believe he's
No, I know
orders.
that. What I'm saying is that we're all accountable for what, even following orders. Following orders, we're accountable. We're accountable for taking that job. We're accountable for taking a paycheck from an establishment that's keeping these things suppressed. And so there's accountability there. You know, I mean, don't pass the buck.
No.
I think like if I can just jump in with like some
Yes.
kind of insight into how all that like plays out in comedy and, you know, particularly late night, right? Because let's be honest, that's where a lot of people are getting their news from, especially in a post-Daily Show world. So I don't think it's always the producers that are saying you absolutely can't talk about this, but you have to kind of picture like how those shows get made. Okay. Like what it takes to make it in comedy is a lot of the times you're going to have to work for free for years, you know, so you get a lot of people with family support. I mean, there are people that do like what I did, which is, you know, work a million like low paying jobs here and there and just be really busy and not sleep or have friends. That path is possible. But like, if you look at like, you know, how most people are getting ahead, they've had a lot of financial support. In the case of writing jobs, it really helps to graduate from an Ivy League institution, you know, in the case of people who are like getting onto, you know, major shows like Saturday Night Live, like Jimmy Fallon's background. Of course, you know, there is like there are just people that break through on pure talent alone. And I don't know what Jimmy Fallon's story is, but a lot of times people are coming from a background where they do have a lot of connections and stuff. So, you know, the political views that those people have is often going to be like a little bit more, you know, centrist, right? Because they're not like, they may not even be aware about like, you know, a lot of things that are impacting people's lives on a daily basis. And I think, you know, you have like a staff where most people are, you know, from a certain political view. And then, you know, like for anybody else, like for myself, even if I was applying for a job on one of those shows, if I like submit a bunch of jokes that are like from a very left viewpoint, like, you know, they have to be at least really like mixed in with like a bunch of stuff about how like Trump is orange or whatever, right? Because like they want to understand that you get like what the viewpoint of the show is. And I know a lot of people that work for those shows, and some have really good politics, some are leftists, but it has to be this thing where it's like very, very mixed in with stuff that is, you know, is not going to piss people off. So I don't even know if you need the producers a lot of the time to explicitly say you can't say this. It's
also it's the advertisers, right?
Yeah.
It's their advertisers. They can't make money if the corporations that are funding them are not paying for advertising, and they're not going to pay for advertising if they're releasing information that's making their corporations not look good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also the great thing about independent media versus corporate media. In corporate media, there is a major hierarchical structure. Whereas with independent media, you know, most people are kind of just doing it on their own. And, you know, Jen brought this up the other day. It seems that the hardest, the biggest hurdle for independent media is there is a tendency to, you know, people don't want to check their egos at the door. People have a tendency to punch sideways instead of punching up.
Oh, we've been getting it in the chatter.
Punching down.
The sideways punchers.
And I do think that the way we can combat the corporate messaging narrative is by doing events like this, where people do check their egos at the door, realize that this is for a cause, there's a call to action, and that ultimately is what is going to allow us to get there. And Justin, if you could jump in, I mean, you handled yourself so incredibly well during the whole force the vote. It ultimately ended up becoming a fiasco, but the premise of what it was all about was right. And now more than ever, it's becoming sort of like, what exactly are the people we've elected actually doing? Because there doesn't seem to be much leverage. Yes, reintroducing Medicare for all, once again, was a great idea, but corporate media is not going to be pushing on them to be making any sort of action. So I really think it's on us in the independent media circuit to really band together and become much more of a cohesive unit. Because the one thing corporate media always does, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, if it involves anything that if it's anything that involves crushing the working class movement, they will band together hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. And I think that that's the mistake that independent media is making. And we're not naming any names. We all know who they are. But I do think that because there's a lot of egos involved, we're not getting anywhere near where we could get if we decided to check our egos at the door.
Yeah, for sure. And then to be completely frank, before like Force the Vote, I've watched a lot of independent media, obviously, and been involved on Twitter, but I didn't know that there was kind of this rift or disagreement in strategy within the left. And so when Force the Vote came out, and, I saw a lot of lefty, YouTubers on board for it, and we were all pushing together. That's what I was like, that's the left. That was my impression of the left at the time. And then I kind of started to realize that, like you were saying, egos weren't checked at the door. It wasn't all about, pressuring politicians to get us what we need, what the working people need in this country. There was relationships, and there was access involved, and there was, when it came to some of the like the lefty organizations, well, they didn't really want to muck up the waters because they had some type of agreement, or just there was a lot of other factors involved. And I think we definitely need to get away from that, because at the end of the day, it's just about, like you said, we need to band together to actually push progressives in power. Because they are really our only lifeline. They're the only people that are actually accountable to us. Like Nancy Pelosi never promised us anything. Hakeem Jeffries never promised us anything, but that's why we were so excited to have those progressives in Congress, because we felt like they, would be accountable to us, and they, would listen to us. And honestly, and I'm sure Jordan, you could talk about this more too, but I feel like they should be using the independent media, right? They should be using us, coming on our shows, saying we need to do strikes, we need to do rallies, we need to do X, Y, and Z, so that we can help them, like FDR said, so we can help them actually push the corporate Democrats, and push the media to actually cover some of the stuff. And whether they cover it with a positive or negative spin, I mean, they've covered Medicare for all with a negative spin for years, and it still has 70% approval across the country and 90% approval in the Democratic Party. So people aren't stupid, right? A lot of times when it comes to people's own material life, especially after a pandemic, they can understand that this is something that they want. So you have to be willing to have that media battle, and progressive media holds their most ardent and fervent donor base, and just base as in general. And so I feel like they should be using us more to actually push those messages instead of avoiding us, which causes us to be like really doing all this infighting instead of pushing together towards a common goal. So I mean, I really wish they would do that more. And when they were trying to get elected, they do go on a lot of these shows, but then I've only really seen like Ro Khanna, maybe Pramila Jayapal, she's done a few interviews with Intercept, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not a surprise to anyone here. The left eats their own. The right falls in line, and the left eats their own. And a lot of it is, I think, people wanting credit. They're more concerned, like Peter said, it's an ego thing. And it's like, we can't get out of our own way. And so that's one of those things that I think definitely plagues the left. I mean, we see it way more I don't see this on the right with independent media versus corporate media on the right. Is that something that they? I mean, I don't see
Well,
that.
I won't name any names, but Jordan and I are actually personal friends, and there are times where he has shared with me people.
I'll name names, Peter.
Okay, well then that's your prerogative.
I'm just saying, like, they would always make excuses, being like, "Oh, well, does it have anything to do with Trump?" And it's like, that has nothing to do with this story. Well, can you tie Trump into it somehow, some way?
That's juicy.
And now they have no excuse. Now what are they going to say? Now what is their excuse for saying, yeah, I don't think it's important to cover people dying because their water's poisoned or because we don't have a universal healthcare system so people can't go and get checked for COVID and whatnot.
No, they have to watch Biden fall up the steps 3 times.
Yeah, and let every meme follow along with that.
Well, I mean, let's just call it what it is, all right? Force the vote, for example. I'm not saying this out of bitterness. It's just, it is what it is. If Cenk Uygur would have launched that, Sam Cedar and the rest of them who were against it would have been for it. I mean, that's the reality. The progressive left, in many ways, has kind of become a BS high school clique with, a lot of temper tantrums, and this one doesn't like this one, and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, listen, I publicly said, although I agree with force the vote, at times I thought Jimmy was, kind of self-sabotaging, because I don't know, when somebody calls me effing Lucifer, if somebody calls me an effing sellout and effing Lucifer, I typically don't want to do what they want me to do. With that said, and I got attacked for that. How dare you, criticize Jimmy? I mean, the bottom line is, I think on the progressive left, and this kind of started, I think, after Bernie dropped out in 2016. I think there's been, a radicalization of thought, maybe, where everything's very black and white and there's no gray area. And if you don't agree with me 1,000%, you're a sellout. And if you're not fire breathing as hard as I am, you're a fraud, this and that. And that's just not reality, And I also think that's kind of counterproductive to us seizing power. Like if you want to seize power, then the way to seize power is to stop eating each other's own and start being productive. And in my view, I think, right now, from force to vote, but also right this minute, you're not going to have better conditions than this for a real populist revolt. And the truth is, it's terrible conditions. Poverty has gone dramatically up during this pandemic. Tens of millions of more people don't have health insurance, not to mention the eviction apocalypse that we're facing. There is a huge moment right now for the left to come together. But the reality is, independent media, and there's a lot of them. I said this when I was at the Young Turks. Some people are more interested in hearing their own voice than actually getting this stuff done. And I would say to the Young Turks, other large platforms, you don't always have to agree with every single thing, but just look at it. Cenk was against force to vote for some reason, and then 2 months later was doing a video about let's burn bridges. And the truth is, you have to be willing to threaten to block things to get things done. He was basically endorsing force to vote just 2 months later. And the reality is, it was because folks didn't like the person's tone who was championing it. And I think if the left doesn't, you don't have to like Jimmy, you don't have to like me, you don't have to like anybody. But at the core, you can't forget the core is so many people are rationing medicine right now. So many people don't have health insurance. There was just a study that so many people died because we don't have universal health care that didn't need to die. That is the fundamental thing. It's not what Jimmy Dore's motivations are or anybody else's. It's just, every other country far less wealthy than us is actually providing its citizens with the relief that they need. And we're not. And I think the left needs to, instead of focusing on who's a sellout and who's not, we need to try and come together around the actual issues. And the other thing is, there are effective ways of shaming people, even the AOCs. You don't need to call them fraud, sellouts, this, the other thing. A simple hashtag, where's the ruckus? That would have done. There's a way. You don't need to idolize these politicians. She's a politician. But I think there's better ways of pressuring the progressives, which Justin, correctly said, this is our best chance, these politicians, without demonizing them. I think pressure, but move away from demonizing each other.
And you brought up a great point about burning bridges and, what, for example, is AOC doing? The one thing that doesn't get talked about enough with AOC is the statement she made about Julian Assange. That was that should scare people, how bad her response was to Julian Assange. Not only so much because, it's one thing to not take a position, which is bad enough as it is, but AOC basically alluded to Assange being okay with him being prosecuted. I mean, that is the type of thing that I think should scare people more.
She said she had some concerns.
And when you put something like that out there,
Bernie has been weak on it too, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we were talking about that earlier. There is not anybody in Congress that has spoken out about Julian Assange. There's nobody there that has taken a real stand on Julian Assange. They don't put it out. They're certainly not promoting it. So, it's complete fecklessness.
And I do think that there's also something to be said for, people basically saying, listen, Jen around here is going to catch a lot of heat for doing this. There's no question that that's going to happen.
They hate me anyway.
But it's going to be even more cannon fodder, to basically say, oh, you're an Assange apologist or whatever.
Well, I'm already an Assad apologist, so I might as well be an Assange apologist.
But I do think that this is still a very hot button issue that people really don't want to touch. I think people are really afraid of saying anything positive about Julian Assange. I think they're just, this is the one issue that if you're on the inside, you're basically told point blank, you do not talk about Julian Assange. Under any circumstances, you do not bring him up. And you certainly do not bring him up in a positive way. And would love to hear what you guys think about that and why that may be the case.
And then we are going to do a nice little segue into, we could decide if nobody volunteers, I'm going to round robin pick somebody to make our phone call to the DOJ during this hour and read our script. It's unnecessary to have everybody do it on screen. But talk a little bit about how you think that, they've handled this and how they're hiding from this.
Well, I'll say that I think, it's kind of a vicious cycle because the less coverage something gets, the more people just think that you're, a conspiracy theorist or something if you're bringing it up. Like, not just Assange, but I remember back in, 2015, people who were talking about drone strikes, which are, in my opinion, absolutely objectively terrible and disgusting, but people who were talking about that, it was like, are you a conspiracy theorist or a professor? And then with when Bernie when his campaign really started to get off the ground, all of a sudden the window of things that it was publicly acceptable to talk about because it was getting a lot of news coverage, it expanded. So people could talk about U.S. foreign policy, the big pharma, Wall Street, and it wasn't if you were talking about Wall Street, people didn't think that you were, a lentil eating, anarchist all in black. All of a sudden, it was just not that. Look, all of my friends are like that, so no shade or anything. But I think that the fact that none of these people are talking about it, politicians and media, it makes it less acceptable to talk about, and then people talk about it less, and then it's less acceptable. So, it's important to just have something break through as much as possible.
I think you're right. It's a chicken and an egg problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So you did see that, Justin.
It's even more of telling that you probably had a better shot of him getting pardoned by Trump than Biden. You don't even see anyone lobbying Biden because it's just that's not going to happen. And that's sad that's, supposedly some type of semblance of a left party.
Well, if you want to talk about Merrick Garland and his...
that's why this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. Look, Merrick Garland was originally, we know he was nominated by Obama. Obama did not prosecute Julian Assange. So there is I have a little bit of hope that this is an opportunity with new attorney general coming in, that if they get flooded with enough stuff, that he could be the voice that says to Biden, this isn't going to go well. Just like Eric Holder said, this is not a good plan.
Well, you guys weren't here for the last hour, but Rania Kalik made a phone call, and
that was
the
funny.
switchboard operator was clearly perturbed because I guess she's been getting quite a few phone calls today about this.
But it should have gone to a voicemail. It was so funny. And the lady's like, I just answer the phones. I'm not here to take your comment. Like, whatever. It was
yeah,
so
she
funny.
just snapped, and it was like, okay, she's clearly been getting a lot of phone calls, so she definitely doesn't like this.
The other thing is, I'll just, from a journalistic point of view, like if there was any living, breathing journalist left in the country, what is Julian Assange charged with? Nobody knows.
Espionage.
Right. But if you actually read the thing, there is no actual accusation. They say that he kind of, sort of suggested a password or something, but they don't actually provide any evidence for that.
Yeah.
I mean, every journalist, any actual good journalist known to man, including myself, you kind of, play up sources to try and get information for you. Ask sources. Can you, do you think you can get this person to talk to me? Or everything within legal bounds, you try and incentivize your source to give you the information you want. But the actual charges against Julian Assange are not worth any paper they're written on because there's nothing in there. They basically claim he tried to help Chelsea Manning get a password with no evidence for it. Secondarily, they essentially are keeping someone in prison even after the judge has ruled against it. They allow terrorists to walk on appeal while something is being appealed. They let terrorists go home on bail, but Julian Assange is being kept there, even though the judge has ruled he can't be extradited. I don't agree with the judge's reasons. Her reasons was, mental health and chance of suicide, not, this is a bogus charge. But the point is, I agree with you, Jen, that we do have an opportunity here to put pressure because I don't think Joe Biden could answer what he's being prosecuted for. I don't think Merrick Garland could answer it because there is no answer for it. There is no evidence that Julian Assange actively worked to hack anything. And that is what they're supposedly charging him with. And it is completely flimsy. And if there was a pressure campaign, not only against Biden, Garland, the New York Times, the Washington Post, I don't really think any of them have an answer other than Russia, which is not what he was charged with. You want to hate him and be like a resistance, scoundrel that you think he elected Donald Trump? That's fine. You're wrong, but that's fine. But nobody seems to be able to answer what is he actually being prosecuted for and why is he still in jail? It's a major opportunity we have if the left would come together. And I would say, I agree with Peter. It's a sad day when Bernie wouldn't say anything during his campaign. AOC will not say anything. I don't even think Ilhan Omar or any of the Squad Plus will say anything. If you're not going to stand up for Julian Assange, then I'm by no means comparing myself to him, but it does endanger lower level journalists because I'm working on a story that's about to come out. I have a lot of information I shouldn't have. If they could keep Julian Assange in prison for nothing, the slippery slope then comes to independent journalists who obtain information. So I think we all should come together you're not going to move Biden left, but maybe you could shame him enough to just drop this thing.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think it's more of a Justice Department thing, because look, Biden mentally could be checked out anyway. I mean, who knows? But somebody like Merrick Garland, who does know, just like Eric Holder knew, that this is a very dangerous line that they're walking on with this. And that would be the case, even if they thought they could have something maybe, but they don't have anything. And even keeping Chelsea Manning incarcerated for however long and trying to get her to say something was not successful. So this at this point is just this amorphous hate of Julian Assange by the mainstream. Like this, it's completely amorphous. You'll get everybody saying things like having to do with the 2016 election. You'll get people that still bring up those fraudulent Swedish sexual assault claims that we know led to nowhere, but that was still lingering because once it's out there, it's out there. And so that's what the general perception is of him. Most people have no idea. They just think Julian Assange bad.
Well, the Democratic establishment didn't really have a problem with Assange over a decade ago when he exposed the war crimes of the Bush-Cheney administration. Just saying, this is all hyper-partisan politics. That's what this is.
All right, so we did get a request, as you saw before, Justin, that someone thinks that you should make the call since you're NFL. I guess, the truth is we are that kind of country where an NFL player has infinitely more pull than an independent journalist. That is us, the US of A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up our share screen. And do you mind doing it? I mean, if you
just make a call.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I want to take that part down. I don't know where it is. Will you find it and take that off?
Sure.
So we can see people's faces. Yeah, you call, put it on speakerphone so we can hear it. Do the Department of Justice. Do the Department of Justice. That's I'm hoping everybody in their off time will do both.
Yeah, we're not trying to troll the lady who's working the switchboard.
No, because then when you call her, you ask for your senator, and then you'll get their voice recording.
She actually hung up.
She actually hung up on Rania, but which we do want people to do in their own time. But the Department of Justice comment line goes through, and then when you it'll say hit 1 for making a comment on civil justice or criminal or constitutional issues. So do that, and then read script. And feel free to, ad lib it or, however you want.
I think I'll probably stick to the script, but
that's fine. That's what I did. It is. Thank you, John Holder. He wrote that for us.
Y'all hear that?
Your opinion is valuable to us. We cannot return calls made to this number.
Yeah.
If you would like to contact the Department of Justice, including the Attorney General, please log on to our website at www.
Can I skip this? Just hit something.
It'll say in 1 second just to push 1. I don't know what happens.
If you have a law enforcement issue, please contact your local police or the FBI in your area.
The FBI.
Yeah, don't do that.
If you would like to leave a comment regarding civil and constitutional rights, please press 1.
That's it.
Please leave your comment regarding civil and constitutional rights.
Record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or press pound for more options.
Hello, my name is Justin Jackson, and I'm calling from Los Angeles. I'm calling to ask the United States to drop its case against Julian Assange. I'm deeply concerned about the potential ramifications that prosecuting a journalist for exposing American war crimes will have on our civil liberties. Joe Biden promised that he would end Trump's attack on the press, yet his administration has indicated that it will continue to seek Assange's extradition. The prosecution of Assange creates a dangerous precedent that will prevent journalists from holding our government accountable, which is probably what y'all want. Please protect our First Amendment and drop the case against Assange immediately. Thank you for your time.
Excellent.
Perfect.
It's user friendly, right? It's very user friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was excellent. And I like that you added that what you all want. It's nice to ad lib a little bit in there, mix it up a bit.
A real voice for radio, Justin.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jordan.
Yeah, you sound smooth. You sound smooth.
Yeah, we'll get you on NFL Today whenever the playing career ends. That'll be fun. NFL Network. NFL Network.
I don't know if they're gonna allow me on there, but we'll see.
They're not gonna like him by then.
He's not very corporate.
Much of a loose cannon.
Interest friendly. That's for sure.
You're not gonna just toe the line, man.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think? How did that felt? It's easy, right? The call is easy.
I thought it went super well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Outstanding phone call. 10 out of 10.
I appreciate that.
So do you guys, we can let them promote or anything before, or just go wherever you were going to go. That's good.
Well, what I was going to say is, the one thing that gets talked about a lot, and it's true, and this is something that Medea Benjamin said in the first hour, is that you have to have a call to action. You have to have something with teeth. You can't just be, I know it's a cliche, and I know a lot of people have been saying it lately, but to a degree, it's true. It's that you can't just be tweeting. Everybody can put out a good message, and you get the likes and the retweets and all that. But where's the substance? Where's the teeth? By calling the Department of Justice and basically ruining their work days because they have to deal with this at some point, they're not going to want to deal with it anymore. And they're just going to say, we might as well let this go because it's really affecting our ability to do our job. That's why doing protests and things like that are effective, but it all depends on how you're doing it. And I always say, if you hurt them in their wallet or with their reputation, it's gonna enact change. It's just gonna happen. That's the way it is, and that's why I bring it back to, because this hour is really about independent media versus corporate media. Corporate media will, on all sides, will always fall in line if it's about corporate interests. We in the independent media circuit, no matter where you are, have to come together if we're going to combat corporate messaging. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. So John is saying we should have everyone do. I mean, I don't know that I feel inclined to have everybody to call.
No, I mean, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to do it, I'll put the script back up, but I certainly am not going to force it on anybody.
I could call and I could have I could have a little fun with it if you think that's okay.
That's fine. You could go ahead and do it. You want to call? Put the script back up.
Let's have a little fun with this.
But then you need your phone. Where's your phone? Right there.
I got my
you got to
phone
call.
right
You got to do the whole thing.
Should I do Bernie or Bill?
I don't know.
Okay.
Bernie. Do Bernie.
Okay.
He's dying to do his Bernie. He's dying to do his Bernie.
No, I think that even doing either one's fine. But yeah. All right. Hang on 1 second, guys.
All right. He's dying to do this. He has to do this. This is.
I'll put the number in my phone for. I will. I'll do it. I'll set myself up right after. Yeah.
I really think that Hillary's just got to let this go already. I think she's been doing this for way too long, and I just really can't take her nagging the hell out of me all day, every day.
You're not going to be able to do that.
If they let this Assange guy go, I mean, I think things would be a lot better. Okay, I think I got this figured out now. I just want to thank all y'all for tuning in today, and I really, really hope that Assange gets free, because I mean, Hillary just can't let this go. I mean, at some point, she's just going to have to accept the fact that she was never going to be president, and well, she wants to blame Assange. That's on her. But I think I'll make a call on you all's behalf. I think you'll appreciate it.
But you can't do this like that.
I most certainly can.
All right, fine. But I think you should do it. You're going to need to do it legitimately.
Oh, I'm going to do it legitimately. You just wait and see.
Okay, here we go.
I'll call these people right now.
You have it on speaker.
Although your opinion is valuable to us, we cannot return calls made to this number.
See if you push one now with it.
I'm an old friend. So right now they're getting ready for it, and we're going to walk around and chat.
Hello, my name is Bill, and I'm calling from Arkansas. I'm calling to ask the United States to drop its case against Julian Assange. I'm deeply concerned about the potential ramifications, that's a big word, that prosecuting a journalist for exposing American war crimes will have on our civil liberties. Joe Biden, he's kind of a friend, promised that he would end Trump's attacks on the press, yet his administration has indicated that it will come to seek Assange's extradition. That's another big word. The prosecution of Assange creates a dangerous precedent that I'm kind of responsible for setting back in 1996. And that will prevent journalists from holding our government accountable. So please protect our First Amendment and drop the case against Assange immediately. Thank you for your time.
Pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
That was very good. Yeah.
He does a good Bill, and he does a good Bernie. Don't bring Bernie out now. And he does a good Trump, and I'm done with that one. Yeah. We're done. I'm done having to look at the big Trump face.
No, you're gonna really. The more you egg me on, the more I'm going to do it.
You left out.
What did we leave out?
You left out that Hillary wanted to drone Assange. She was caught saying that.
I didn't want it to get like too out of control with them. Yeah, the fact that they've got Hillary literally saying, "Why can't we just drone bomb this guy?" That's like, I mean, wow, it's so bad. But you should have some fun with it. I mean, that's really the idea. We should just be kind of like, we know it's a serious issue, but we also want to have fun with it. And, that's why I did it that way. Cause I think it's, at least it'll be more memorable. And I think more people will talk about it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, they'll talk about it, but obviously that doesn't get to count as a legitimate constituent concern.
Who can do Putin? Well,
no, don't even try.
Katie does a really good Russian accent, and she's got the burqa hat too. So
the security is just here to protect management, and
Who is that?
Yeah, I'm not
know.
sure where that audio is coming from. That is interesting. Getting like some type of a
Like somebody's coming in.
There's voices talking to us.
I hear voices.
I hear voices. No, really, I
hear
do. I
you.
hear voices.
All right, so guys, if like we can just go and say like where people can find you, where they can follow what you're working on, what you're promoting, whatever. The just take it. We can go. We're gonna go.
Take
in a
her away.
We'll go in a circle from my side. So Jordan.
Yeah, Status Quo on YouTube, if you could find us there, because they're hiding us. YouTube.com/Status Quo, COUP. And we broke a big story in January with The Intercept on the Flint water cover-up. And we have a follow-up to that coming out, God willing, in the next week or so. But main thing is YouTube and statusquo.com.
Awesome. And I recommend everybody getting membership to Status Quo as well, because it's better to work outside. I think dealing with it's just better to do it that way. So I recommend everybody joins.
$5 a month.
Okay.
Statusquo.com/join. Thank you.
Kate.
So I have a leftist feminist comedy podcast called Reply Guys. We will be discussing the updates on this case. And also I wrote an audiobook. It is on Audible, but I did get some socialist stuff in there despite the corporate platform. So please check it out, Dirtbag Anthropology. And yeah, that's my Twitter and my IG are in my name.
Excellent. Justin, I know you got something going on now.
Yeah. So I got a new show on YouTube. It's called The Takeover. I upload stuff pretty much every single day. So you can find me there. Just look up The Takeover Justin Jackson. It'll pop up. On Twitter, I'm at J_manprime21. And yeah, I also play football. So if you like football,
I also happen to play football.
Like sport. But hopefully next year, yeah, you check me out there too.
We'll definitely check you out. It makes me nervous. I told you that one, and it makes me very nervous. I get like this. I don't know if it's like a Jewish mom thing. And ever since I saw the movie Concussion, and then I hear the slamming and the bones, and it just freaks me out. And I look, and I'm like, that's going to hurt your neck. And it just makes me. The older I get, the more nervous it makes me.
I really do think that Justin will stop playing football when he knows it's time. There are a lot of guys that end up playing way past when they should, and that's usually the biggest mistake. You know. Yeah, no, you've already, as you said, you've already planted the seeds for your next career, which is a great move.
It's awesome.
And you guys are fantastic.
Thank you all so much for coming
Jordan, on. Obviously, we'll discuss, obviously this telethon today has been very, very solid so far. So we will discuss potential things that we might do in the future, and we'd love to have you a part of it. And Kate, Brooklyn mom defiant. What more can I say? That's like that was the ultimate troll move, and the fact you went with it. I mean, it was
very clever.
Chef's kiss.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. It's been so great talking with you all.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Bye. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.